welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the missing persons case of Laura Ayala, who went missing from Houston, Texas in 2002. And the reason I chose this case, well, there's several reasons. One of the reasons I chose this case was because I have not seen one true crime YouTuber cover this case, and I feel like her case needs to be heard and shared. Another reason why I chose this case was because I remember it like it was yesterday. Laura and I actually only lived 15 minutes apart from each other from whenever this happened, and we were only 2 months apart in age. And I felt like if this could happen to Laura only 15 minutes away, it definitely could have happened to me or, somebody that I knew or I was close with. So, as always, this video may contain explicit content, including rape and murder, so viewer discretion is advised. Well, Laura was a 13-year-old 7th grader who went to DD Middle School, and while doing my research, I found nothing but good things that people said about Laura. I'm going to go ahead and link her missing persons Facebook page down below, and you can read all the information you want to there. But her friends and family described her as sweet, smart, loving, caring, and having a heart of gold. And she was very, very much involved in school. I'm going to go ahead and let you watch this news clip really quick.
Laura Ayala, seen in a red sweater on her way to a party 2 months ago, a 13-year-old girl who is now missing, and a family desperate to find her. The people who've taken her, please bring her back. I know they have families, and if something would happen to them, I know they'd feel bad too. Laura Ayala vanished Sunday night after she went to buy a newspaper for a school project. Joining in the search, the teacher who made the assignment.
I'm devastated for the fact that, one, she was going out so late and gathering the information, and she could have waited the next day, gone to the library like they planned. She was a very hardworking child.
A 7th grade honor student in the writing club, chess club, and garden club. A model child vanished, being sought by volunteers with the Laura Recovery Center, so named for 12-year-old Laura Smithers, abducted and killed 5 years ago. It hits close to home.
She has the same name as my daughter, so obviously it's very close to my heart.
Another Laura, another child missing, and another family begging for a safe return. If they want some kind of reward, we'll give it to you. We'll see how we manage, but I want my daughter.
On March 10th, 2002, Laura decided that she was going to go to the gas station that was about 50 feet behind her apartment complex because she wanted to buy the Sunday newspaper for a school project that she had due. I have to say that it's unclear whether or not she had permission to go, and I'm adding this because I saw people going back and forth on her Facebook page, bashing her mom and on news articles and stuff like that. And just so you know, I couldn't find any information saying whether or not she had permission to go. So anyway, she ends up going to the gas station, and not long after, I want to say it was about 5 minutes after, her mom realized that either she was taking too long or her mom realized that she went without permission. So her mom goes to that gas station to look for her. She makes it there, but the clerk says that she did make it there, but that she was alone and that she bought her newspaper and that she left. So her mom immediately, realizes that something is wrong. So she goes back home and she tells, her family members, something's wrong. We can't find Laura. So they actually take the path that Laura probably would have taken to get there and back, and someone finds her shoes and the newspaper scattered on the path. They know that something is terribly wrong at this point, and they immediately call the police. So as you would think, in missing persons cases, missing teens cases, a lot of the time police may think that, oh, hey, she ran away, something like that. But that was not the case here. The police immediately took it very seriously, I guess because, of the evidence, the newspaper and everything was scattered. Clearly something awful had happened there. So they don't waste any time, and they start a search actually by foot, I think on horseback too. We are in Texas, and they couldn't find her. They questioned family, friends, neighbors. Nobody saw Laura. There were 30 sex offenders in a 2-mile radius from where she lived, and they were able to rule them all out as suspects. An Amber Alert was immediately issued, and it described Laura as being only 4 feet tall, weighing 90 pounds. She had brown hair with blonde highlights, and she was last seen wearing a blue checkered dress. Several nonprofit organizations were involved in the search as well, including the Laura Recovery Center and Texas EquiSearch. This was like a huge deal in Houston. Like I said in the intro, like I remember this happening very, very clearly. The community took this really seriously. Unfortunately, weeks passed and there's still no sign of Laura, but the way her family was, they were very, very hopeful. They kind of felt like if they hadn't found a body, that there was still hope that she was alive somewhere. 2 months later, police find out that on March 5th, just 3 days after Laura's disappearance, that a bus left Houston around 10:30, and it was carrying a passenger that matched the description of Laura. The bus company records revealed that a ticket was purchased for the girl under the name of Laura A. And she was accompanied by 2 passengers, 1 male and 1 female. The male was named Julio Barrios and the woman was named Virginia Ramirez. It's believed that a second bus took all 3 of them to another bus, and that bus actually took them to Mexico. The police tried to track down those people, but it never went anywhere. After they were dropped off in Mexico, they just didn't have anything from there. Around the time that Laura went missing, there were actually several murders of young women around the Houston area, and people wondered if they could be connected. One of those cases was a girl by the name of Esmeralda Alvarado. Esmeralda was described as a good student. She was involved in school as well. She participated in ROTC. She was in ballet. She was a very beautiful girl. Esmeralda was last seen leaving her boyfriend's house to use the payphone on January 18th, 2002, just 2 months before Laura's disappearance. Esmeralda's nude body was actually found only 4 days later on January 22nd, 2002 in the 1800 block of Market Street. She had been raped and shot in the head. On May 31st, 2002, 2 waitresses went missing after finishing up a shift at a restaurant that they worked at. The bodies of 24-year-old Roxana Capulan and 38-year-old Maria Rangel were found on June 1st, 2002 inside Roxana's Dodge Durango. Their eyes and mouths were covered with tape and they had been shot to death. 2 months later, in August of 2002, police were actually contacted by a confidential informant, and he said that he knew someone that had information about the murders of these 2 women. And the man that he knew was named Walter Sordo. Walter Sordo was a 25-year-old man who was in the U.S. illegally. He was married with children, and he was actually on probation for committing a robbery with a deadly weapon. The detective meets with Walter, and he tells him that he has the information and that he's coming forward because he needs the $5,000 reward money because his wife was pregnant. He tells the detective that a man named Edgardo Cubas and a 15-year-old boy named Eduardo Navarro abducted and killed the women. Edgardo Cubas was a 23-year-old man who was in the U.S. illegally. He had been here since 2002. He did have a common law wife, and he supported himself by installing insulation, and he had no criminal record here in the U.S., but we're unsure of anything that he might have had in Honduras. But Walter tells police that the 2 men actually invited him to go along for the murders. He said that he declined, but he decided to follow them in a separate vehicle instead. He said that he waited across the street in a parking lot, and he actually saw Edgardo and Eduardo abduct the women and force them into Roxana's vehicle. He said that he followed them to a remote location, and after hearing several gunshots, he says that he left. Sometime after the murder, he says that he sees Edgardo in a bar and that Edgardo threatens him and says that if he spoke to anyone about the murders, that he was going to kill him and his family. Police asked Walter for a saliva sample and he gives it to them, and right after that, he tells police that Edgardo forced him to have sex with Maria's corpse. It sounds like police were catching on that his story wasn't adding up, and he realized that his DNA was going to be on her body, so he had to make something up. They run his name and he has an outstanding warrant, so they go ahead and arrest him, and After he's arrested, he starts to tell a very different story. So he says that all three men are driving around and they are in Edgardo's Honda and they come across the two women leaving the restaurant. He says that they were looking for someone to rob because Edgardo needed money to pay his rent, and the first people they see are Roxana and Maria. So Walter and Edgardo get out of the vehicle and they forced both of the women into the Durango, and they said at this time is whenever Eduardo was driving Edgardo's Honda, and he follows them to a remote location. They eventually come to a stop, and Walter says that Edgardo starts to rape Roxana. Some reports say that Maria tried to escape the vehicle, to like run off, but some reports claim that Edgardo pushed her out of the vehicle. They're saying that he wanted some type of privacy while he was raping the other woman. Not sure what happened, which is correct or not. But Walter then says that Edgardo tells him to rape Maria, and he says that he does. Reports get really graphic about the rape, but I'm not going to go into detail out of respect for the women and their families. Walter says that afterward he gets back into the vehicle, he and Maria do. He says that he drove a short distance away. He said that he told Edgardo to just let the women go. He put the car in park, that he left the keys in the ignition, and he starts walking back to the Honda where Eduardo was waiting. He heard 3 gunshots and he looked back and he saw Edgardo running towards him. At this point, they both get back into the Honda, and Walter said that he asked Edgardo what happened, and Edgardo replied with, "I killed them whores." Edgardo pulled out a necklace and said that he robbed them of their money and their jewelry. At this point, police feel that they have enough evidence to arrest the 2 other men, so they arrest Edgardo at a construction site where he was working in Tomball, and they arrest Eduardo at his home. While police were interviewing Edgardo, he actually then admits to the rape and murder of Esmeralda as well. He said that he was borrowing his dad's vehicle like he often did, and he said that him and Walter were driving around looking for someone to either rob or rape. It's unclear like their exact motive, but it was something along those lines. So they said that they came across Esmeralda talking on a payphone. Walter forced Esmeralda then they drove to a secluded location where they took turns raping her. Edgardo actually confesses that he is the one who pulled the trigger to end Esmeralda's life himself. On February 1st, 2003, just 5 months after the men were arrested, the police were doing their investigation and they found an unknown female's DNA inside Edgardo's father's van, and they also found some semen. Whenever they tested the DNA, they realized that the DNA didn't belong to Esmeralda, so they decided to test it against Laura Ayala's family, and they were able to link Laura Ayala's disappearance to these 2 men using her family's DNA. Even though police had Laura's DNA inside of the vehicle, the men still were very uncooperative, and they said they had no idea who she was, and they claimed to have no knowledge about her disappearance whatsoever. Due to lack of evidence, they weren't charged in any crime related to Laura Ayala. I'm going to go ahead and give my personal theory about that. I feel like the reason that they won't admit their involvement in Laura's abduction or death is because I want you to look back at the videos and the pictures and the description I shared of Laura. She was like a tiny, tiny girl. She was only 4 feet. She only weighed 90 pounds. And to be honest, I feel like that they were probably like ashamed and embarrassed, and they didn't want to admit that they actually were either attracted to or, harmed a little girl that they thought was probably much younger, because these men had like really young children themselves. Walter and Edgardo were convicted and sentenced to death, but they still have yet to be executed to this day. Walter actually has appealed his death sentence, and he claims that he didn't know any English at all whenever he was being investigated, and that they had an interpreter, but the interpreter didn't have any experience in the court system. So he says that throughout the whole thing, he was very confused. Now, from the information that I gather, the detectives are saying that he eventually confessed to his part. So I'm not sure why he's going back and now saying that he wasn't aware of everything totally. You can actually do a search of his name and find like this whole website he has, and it's called like Save Walter Sordo or something like that. If you want, you can go ahead and look it up yourself. I'm not going to link it in the section down below. And Edgardo's death sentence was actually overturned because they found him not mentally fit to be sentenced to death. So it seems like he's just serving a life sentence now. If you actually Google his name, you can find where a Spanish news station interviewed him, and he sounds really like freaking psycho. Like, he sounds totally crazy. The pictures of him, he even looks nuts. Eduardo Navarro was actually sentenced to 13 years prison time for his role in the deaths of Maria and Roxana. He was released on August 20th, 2015 as a free man. And from what it seems like, he didn't have any involvement in the actual murders themselves. And it seems like he was more than just a tag along. And from what the other two men said, he wasn't involved in Esmeralda's death at all. There are actually a total of 6 homicides that the men were linked to, but they were only charged with the 3. There were actually a lot of robberies and like shootings that were happening around the Houston area at that time, and it's believed that they were involved in all of those as well. They were also able to link them to an attempted abduction outside of a Houston nightclub. By this time, Eduardo Navarro is a grown man, and I have been thinking about it a lot, and I really hope that now he's since now he's out in society, that he is a productive member of society. I really hope that he's turned his whole life around. I can't find any information at all about him. I'm not sure if he's still here in the Houston area, but I hope that if he sees this, that he finds it in his heart to let police know if he has any information at all that could close the case of Laura Ayala. I hope that you either share this video or go to Laura Ayala's missing Facebook page and share her poster as well, because you never know, somebody just might see it and they might have some information. They, may have overheard their mama talking or daddy talking, their friends talking, and somebody may have information about this case. And I'm gonna close this video by saying this. To this day, Laura Ayala's mom still lives in the same apartment that she did 20 years ago, because she still has hope that her baby will come home. So if you have anything that could lead the police in the right direction, or anything at all, big or small, please call Crime Stoppers at 713-222-TIPS. And until next time, be safe.